friends of the.
Hello. Hello.
All right, good morning. We're gonna go ahead and get started. Bye, Rick.
Thanks. I'm hoping a few more come up because Emily will have some interesting things to talk about, but, Emily Carroll is the, Director of Youth Employment Services.
Strategies.
Strategy, that's
Go with that.
the wrong word, at PPL. PPL, Project for Bright Living, been around for a long time. When I started, I got connected with them about 30 years ago. There's a guy, by the name of Joe Salvaggio, who really started it. And I meant to bring his book that he's written. He's got like a, I don't know, I'm gonna call him a social justice street fighter. He's just a tenacious kind of guy. Probably, you looked at a very humble kind of guy, but one of the most, effective fundraiser. He knew every person with a lot of money in this state needed money and say, I want money and I want a lot of it. And so it was an interesting thing. And I connected with that organization years ago and just, they're a great organization. You know, they started out with affordable housing and trying to create opportunities. Joe went, but they bought a bunch of, got some money together, bought a bunch of houses in North Minneapolis. But it morphed into a very significant affordable housing developer in Minnesota, but then much beyond that. And that's what really attracted me to it. It's sort of it's a multifaceted organization attacking multifaceted problems of poverty and social justice and needs in the community and needs of people. And, you know, employment area is one of the areas. We've got some very strong training programs that are very successful. This program that Emily and whatever other parts are involved with is really directed, very hands-on. Her background is really interesting, she'll tell you about it. And very hands-on in terms of working with these youth and trying to come from places where they maybe don't have the right environment to thrive and survive and thrive and pursue something of interest and something that can help them. You know, PPL always used the term self-sufficiency, trying to really create self-sufficiency, create an opportunity for self-sufficiency. And you can't just sometimes give somebody a place to live and say, here, move in and everything will be hunky-dory. It doesn't work that way. So they've got a lot of supportive services in many of their housing projects. They've got employment programs of various kinds. Emily will talk about the LEAP program, which is Learn, Earn, Achieve Potential. It's a broader program that PPL has attached themselves to. And working that, she'll tell you about it. But I've just always been impressed with every time I see something new. And I met Emily, Carol and I met Emily about 6 months ago about some things and just really impressed with things, the hands-on stuff they're doing. It's real hands-on with real people. So, Emily?
Yeah, thank you, Rick, appreciate it. So I feel like I was really well queued up this morning with the conversation and the sermon this morning to talk about the importance of making sure that the young people are like seen and noticed and visible. And so, you know, noticing that maybe someone is not engaged, is dozing off and might fall out the window, and it might mean, you know, resurrection at the end of it is something that we want to prevent. And so I thought that was something that was, along with the celebration of your compliments today, really feeds into kind of the conversation that I'd like to have. So there's a couple different ways we can do this. I'll introduce myself, talk a little bit about PPL and LEAP, and then I can present at you, to you, with you, or we can kind of chat and double click and open up some of the different areas of programming that we have, and we can just have a conversation. We've got a small intimate group that does not need to be like formal presentation. I'm a youth worker, I can pivot on a dime. So this is something that whatever is engaging and interesting for you all, like we don't need to go off of what I've got, but LEAP is complex enough that sometimes it's helpful to have some visuals. So first I will introduce myself. My name is Emily Terrell. I use she, her pronouns. And I have been a lifelong youth worker. I have done lots of different types of work, but it's always been with young people ever since I was a young person. So my work history and the types of work that I've done with young people spans from ministry, That was my original plan, was to be youth minister. And then I went to college and I went to grad school, or I went to college. My last class in in undergrad was a counseling class. And I was like, oh, is that what you're supposed to do with psychology? All right. And so then I went to grad school. I'm a licensed professional clinical counselor. And through all of that process, have worked in faith-based spaces. I was a high school athletics coach in 3 different sports for 10 years. I've done crisis work. I met my husband at the Bridge for Youth in Minneapolis, couple of nods. So a place that young people, if they run away or kicked out or in some kind of family crisis, and then moving through reunification or individuation, depending on their situation. So I have done some of that. I've done mental health therapy in clinics and school-based with a number of different populations, middle school and high school mostly. And then a large chunk of my careers have been around juvenile justice, and in particular, girls in juvenile justice. So probation type groups, and creating programming like gender specific programming. And so all of that led me to LEAP, which really is a culmination of a set of programming for what some folks, funders mostly, call opportunity youth, which is an evolution of the at-risk youth that we used to talk about. And I don't know any young people who have ever called themselves either of those things. Turns out they're young people. And so, but it's a collection of different lived experiences. And I'll talk a little bit about that. But because my experience was supporting young people in foster care, supporting young people who are moving into foster care, or who are young parents, or who have been involved in the justice system or experiencing homelessness, that set of experiences really requires a different way of thinking about programming. And so when I came to LEAP at PPL, and I'll talk about the LEAP program, when I came to PPL, I realized that a lot of our partners in the LEAP program, I had already built relationships with alongside young people. So I knew young people who had gone to this alternative school, or I had worked with young people who had used this housing resource. So my perspective on LEAP is that I had seen it in a lot of ways from the young people's perspectives, walking alongside how hard it is to get involved, how hard it is to get your needs met, and doing some of that work with them. So LEAP was a great fit for me from a systems level because I had the experience. Welcome, come in. And so that is what brought me to LEAP. I continue to wear lots of different hats. I'm my husband and I live in Richfield. He is also really involved in community work. He runs a small nonprofit for criminal justice research. And I have 2 young kids, they're 10 and 7, and they are uber involved in all the things. So it was funny, I was pulling this up and I was like, okay, which one of my tabs of all of the things that I'm involved in? But really all of it comes down to positive youth development and showing up for young people in all the ways that I possibly have capacity for within my own little self. Any questions about any of that before I roll? Great. All right, so you've already heard just a little bit from Rick about what PPL is. So Project for Pride in Living, or PPL, has been around for about 50 years. And the mission is to build the hope, assets, and self-reliance of individuals and families who have lower incomes. And this is something that is really key for me, and really feeling like PPL is a good spot for me, because one of my youth work tenets, one of my, principles is to not do for others what they can do for themselves. There's a quote, an Aboriginal quote that says, if you've come to help me, you're wasting your time. But if you've come because your liberation is bound with mine, then let's work together. And that is something that, especially in the identities that I carry as a cis person, as a white person, coming into a service industry, that is to be of service to community, that I'm not here to do anything for anyone. It's about building the self-reliance for people to be able to have an environment where they can do things for themselves out of their own volition and out of their own agency. So that's something I love about PPL, because that's it. It's about, like, how can you do for yourself, and how do we right some wrongs that have happened in our society so that you can do that. PPL was founded by Joseph Baggio in 1972. We had Paul Williams leading us since 2014, but now we have welcomed Carla Henderson as our new CEO in 2025. She is a dynamo. If you have not looked her up, please do. We're really excited to have her. And then PPL has two main sides of the house, I guess. So we have stable housing, which includes property development. It includes supportive housing. It includes scattered site housing. All the different ways that PPL can be involved in creating affordable housing that is sustainable for folks. We're involved in that. Then on the other side of the house, we have career readiness, because you really, if you have a home and you have an ability to sustain that home and to build your own impact in community, those two things really go together. Those are basic foundations to self-reliance. So within, this is kind of the nesting dolls now. And so the Career Readiness Department has a number of different things within it. If you are interested in some of these other things, I'm happy to speak to it, but I'll just kind of orient you to where LEAP lives. So employment and training has been around for a long time. This is mostly adult programming. This is, career pathway training, like phlebotomy and building operations and it's not customer service, human services types of jobs. And lots of different employers that are connected to those different pathways. Employer development is basically how we build relationships with those employers in order to meet the workforce and economic needs of the employer community in the Twin Cities. And then education, and within education, we have 5 different programs, including 2 alternative schools that you're going to hear more about. The Step Up program, which some folks might have heard of, it's been around for a long time. That's a partnership with the city of Minneapolis. And the Diploma Connect Re-Engagement Center, which is an adult diploma program. So for folks who have aged out of the age of 21, you can't get a K-12, a kindergarten to 12th grade diploma in Minnesota. You would need an adult diploma or a GED. And so Diploma Connect is an opportunity for folks who did not earn their secondary diploma to go back and get it. And then LEAP, this is where LEAP lives. So those are our little compatriots within the education department. Before I move on to LEAP, any questions about PPL? I feel like Ricky did a great intro to Joe Savaggio.
You brought it really nicely, because they're really, really multifaceted.
There's a lot here. I could give many, well, I couldn't, because frankly, I only know so much about the rest of the organization, but there's lots here. Anything thinking for anyone?
And one of the things they've done, and it was so impressive to me, is they created a strong connection, training, education, and just a collaboration with the banking system and the healthcare system. And I mean, they're just really, it's not just like, get this and it might work out somewhere. It's very, very connected. So the banks and the healthcare system did, here's what we need, so can you train them? Yeah, we can train them. And then they connect, and the employment performance and long-term employment performance of this program is really.
Thank you. All right, so what is the LEAP network? So LEAP started out in 2016 as a national initiative through the Social Innovation Fund in the President Obama's administration, and a partnership with the Annie E. Casey Foundation. If you're not familiar with the Annie E. Casey Foundation, give them a Google. They do amazing work around children and families. It was originally a foundation started by now I'm blanking on the delivery service. What's the yellow and brown one? The package delivery.
Oh,
UPS, thank you. I was like, I know the colors. So UPS, the founder of UPS created a foundation to honor his mom and the work that she's done. So she's Annie E. Casey, and the work that she had done caring for children and families. And so they have done an amazing amount of work setting groundwork and research for the kind of work that we do. So they supported 9 local partnerships in 7 states to do a pretty large scale initiative to discover what creates an inclusive environment for opportunity youth. And so these are our partners in this work. If you went to all of these different places, you would hear echoes of what I'm talking about, but the programming would look different because each of the programs are what's necessary for the ecosystem within their locality. But you're going to hear like all of this is in service of the same population. We sunsetted the formal initiative within UKC in December of 2024. But the first phase, 2016 to 2019-ish, was about research. It was about understanding the impact and what works. And then the second phase was about sustainability and scaling. And so they did a really nice job creating an 8-year project where when they exited stage left, all of these partnerships were really self-sustaining from local philanthropy, other national philanthropy, and local government. So, and frankly, we are still in relationship with them in a lot of different ways, just not through this particular line item. So this, I'm just going to quickly orient us to. It's a lot of words, but this helps you understand kind of how we do our work. So, like I said, the first phase up here, they identified kind of the core elements, which we in this metaphor call the seeds. So these are the seeds that make for a healthy environment for opportunity youth. They did that through evaluation and conversation within that first phase of LEAP. And so those components reflect kind of what we've grown our program to be. And so then we identified the varieties that would work best for our climate here in Minnesota. Is that metaphor making sense? Okay. So then moving on, we planted those seeds at various sites across the metro area in partnership with those sites. So we see ourselves a lot more as an intermediary, which will be confusing when I talk about where some of those sites are, because some of them are within PPL. So it's a little bit back and forth, but LEAP as ourselves, see ourselves as a go-between. We grew those seeds with resources from funders and system partners to see what would thrive. And then 2022-24, as we learned about which seeds would grow at which sites, we started replicating. We started offering the opportunity to grow gardens at different sites. We went from 8 sites to 22 over the course of that time. And so for some, we were like adjusting, we were just providing seeds. We said, these are the programs, off you go. For some, it was like, we needed to till the soil a little bit. We needed to lay fallow for a year. We needed to set up irrigation systems because they're like, we want to do this, but nobody is funding it. So how do we make sure that that happens? And pulling weeds, getting things out of the way. And then 2024 and onwards, each site is now able to harvest what they need for their communities. They have culturally relevant ingredients. And when I say culturally, I mean cultural, like for the cultures of the individual students, but also the culture of the community that we're in, which is kind of its own thing. And then as we mature as a program, we are better able to identify what we need to be as environmental specialists. So we're going in and being like, what care do the sites need to make sure that their gardens are thriving? So this is kind of how we have evolved from the core elements to the 22 sites that I'm going to tell you a little bit about. Any questions now? Or thoughts? All right, so these are the components or the program areas. So with us as the connective tissue, also if I'm continuing with this metaphor, we're also, does anyone know what mycelium is? It's the like underground mushroom network that makes sure that a group of plants, a grove of trees, for example, can communicate with each other and share resources. You don't see it, you don't know what's happening, but it's underground, making sure that the whole community thrives. That's kind of how LEAP rocks. That's what we do. We are not always, despite the fact that we have very loud, splashy branding, we are not always like, hey, look at us. It's look at the work that our young people are doing and look at the environment the sites are creating and how are we supporting that in the background. So by creating a supportive network that works on behalf of youth and with their experience in mind, we reduce the burden on youth navigating those resources and opportunities on their own. So these are our different program areas. I could talk about any of these for, I mean, I'm clearly like verbally inclined, so I could talk about any of these things for a long time. So it'll really be where you all have some interest to hear about. But career readiness is a specific program called JAG, Jobs for America's Graduates. That's a national partner. They've been around for 40 years, started in Delaware. and they provide career readiness content for high school, middle and high school students. Basic needs support is through a partnership with Hennepin County to provide case management for students who have been out of school and now are entering back into the school system. Youth apprenticeships, internships, and exposure opportunities is probably where I think you'll have a little more of the curiosity, especially based on what we heard today. And then youth leadership, how are young people agents of their own change and agency about what we're doing? So there's lots of cool stuff there. An alumni network, to make sure that young people have other folks in their community that have been through what they've been through and that they can rely on. And then systems change is going upstream and making sure that we are not just solving the problems that are in front of young people today, but also trying to remove those barriers for future youth. And we've done lots of different work, and the youth have led lots of different work, both at the Capitol and at local government, and like policies and procedures within organizations. So I'm going to show you, I'm going to do just a little video. I did this video, it's just a little slideshow, a couple minutes, for our kickoff this spring, or this fall, excuse me. Our kickoff, so that it was like, this is what we did last year, what do you want to see us do this year? And so this is just some photos, and if you're like curious about any of these things, then we can dig into some of that.
Wait, go back. Wait. Down.
All right. Anyone curious about anything?
I'm curious.
Yeah?
I'm curious because we sat down with you and so you shared things with us and I'm still curious. And I saw it there. Tell us, if you would, the story you told Richard and I about the program where someone or something happened so that you could get glass blowing equipment.
Uh-huh.
And the students that perhaps you didn't think would have an interest were like, whoa,
Mm-hmm.
this is my idea. This is fun.
Yeah.
And then they'll be, take it to the young man that was gonna go away to Europe.
Yeah.
I'd like to hear a little bit, or maybe they'd like to hear a little bit more about why I was excited.
Yeah, sure. So, this is perfect. So we're going into apprenticeships, okay? So with our young people, I'm gonna orient, because I'm gonna tell that story and I'm gonna orient based on what we heard this morning. And that is that when we were watching the pictures of the youth in your community, I noticed that in all of those pictures that you saw, I saw things like canoeing, doing plays, performing music, camping, sports, all of these different things that those young people got exposed to either in their own lives or within this community, right? Those are like noteworthy moments enough that it was like in this slideshow for this group of this congregation that wanted to celebrate welcoming those young people. And the thing that I thought was so important was that for Opportunity Youth, I really see the work that we do as our responsibility as a community to get a second chance at offering opportunities for young people when they miss them the first time around. Because our young people either had some disengagement from school, some thing that interrupted it, whether it was family homelessness, maybe it was their own chemical health issues, maybe it was some thing that they did that got them in trouble with the law, whether that was their own decision or someone else around them. Regardless, they had that like childhood experience interrupted. Maybe it was mental health, maybe it was the chemical health issues of their families, like whatever it was, something happened where a lot of these young people did not get the experiences that you saw from the photos this morning. And so before we even get into saying, what do you want to be when you grow up? What are the trainings you want to do? What do you want to go to college for? Da, 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 da. We have to acknowledge that there was a lack of exposure, a lack of opportunity with no strings attached. By the time you are like 20, no one is asking you, what you doing for fun, right? People are asking you like, well, how is that going to turn into a job? And how are you going to support yourself? And so we see our opportunity to offer exposures to young people without any strings attached. Learn something about yourself. Full stop. Find out if this is something you're into. Find out if something like this would be something you're into. Find out if this is something that you want nothing to do with. All of that is fair game. And so within the apprenticeships, we offer exposures and internships that are low stakes that they can tap into and be like, oh yeah, not for me. Or actually, that was kind of cool. Is there more of that? So then to your question, one of those experiences, we cultivate these exposure opportunities with partnerships and organizations that love our young people already, that want our young people in the space, because our young people are moving through the world being told they do not belong in lots of spaces. Yeah.
I want to share, since you said that I'm following this, and I work at WCA in Minneapolis, and we're partners with BPL. And one of the people that she's talking about, he was actually not a youth. He came to my program, but he had been through all of the BPL programs. And when he came to my teacher training programs, he would sit like this, and we would be like, okay, Ron, it's time to sing a song. And he'd be like, we're gonna sing a song, right? And then slowly by slowly, he got connected with the job, he got connected into a community that they were working with kids, and then that man became the leader of the song singing. Just, I mean, the most joyful thing, and it really changed his life. He never thought he would work with children or find a career. He had been through all of those things that you talked about, and then some, and it was the most amazing thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
And I could be a partner.
It is, I'll tell a different story. I'm gonna come back to that because I have a story about a young person on one of our other exposures. But so these young people need to be given the chance to see themselves differently, to see themselves out of their current context. So we find partnerships where the likelihood that at least the environment is gonna be a vibe, that people are gonna be understanding when they're like, like that's okay to be in. So we made a partnership with a place called Foci Center for Glass Arts. And that was just because we have really dedicated, connected staff who are like youth workers to our cores to know where these environments are. And so we built this relationship and we're like, what if we just did a 3-week series? Let's just see. We're just gonna make this partnership. We're gonna recruit some young people. They're gonna be like, what? What do you want me to do? Some person who cares about them at their sites is gonna be like, you should do this thing. And I'll be like, I mean, I guess. So they go, and we had a group of young people. A couple of them were like, glad I did it. And a couple of them have become our OGs, like our originals, who loved glass blowing. It had the right amount of like creativity and art and danger and like all of those things that are like kind of get you literally fired up. You're just like, this is great. And they kept coming back to us and be like, okay, what's next? And then we would make another thing and they'd be like, okay, well, what's next? And so one of the ways that we build apprenticeships is from a core of youth interest. Because we have a lot of partners across the country. We're part of lots of national like learning groups and things. And a lot of times folks are building amazing programming with amazing, excited employers, but young people don't want to do it. So they're like, we have this partnership and we just can't recruit for all the positions we have. We have a different problem where we have young people who are hungry and ready and we need to find the right partners. And so Foci was one of those examples where the young people were just telling us, this is awesome. And we're like, okay, what does it look like to have an apprenticeship in fabrication, in glass installation, in museum curation? Like, what is it? What does this look like? None of us know anything about glass blowing. So they're learning all these skills that you saw in some of those photos. And got to the point where the Foci was really invested in these young people and wanted to bring them on some trips. And so because glass blowing is a very global community, it's small, but like there are conferences all the time. And so Foci asked us if they could bring our young people to a conference in Chicago and then another one in Detroit to participate and demonstrate and learn from other glass blowers. So we're like, okay, trips, cool, let's put that together. So off they went. At one of those trips, there was one of our really good partners at Foci was like leading the trip with a group of young people, and someone was sitting behind them who knew the staff, her name is Abby, at Foci well enough, and was so impressed with their engagement and their engagement with each other that he flagged that he has a partner who leads glass blowing trips to Murano, Italy, to Venice. And so
The lead place to go and study glass.
glass, that's where you learn glass. That's where you go. And so he just noted that, apropos of nothing, just noticed this group of young people were like, they would be a great group too. So fast forward a couple of years, that materialized. That person who is a bigwig in glass blowing education partnered with, I kid you not, like the Prince of Venice. His name is Mark Antonio Brandolini. He has an ancient family that has 2 1,400 villas on the water that you reach by, water taxi. And he is a product of an aristocrat and a French glassblower. And so anyway, it is an amazing story. And so they approached us and were like, you want to send you to Italy? And we're like, sure. And so this summer, one of my staff, Victoria, one of the Foci staff, Abby, took 4 youth, including some of those OGs, and one of our youth apprentices, one of our young people, her name is Ariana, is an apprentice at Foci. So now you see the full evolution of this program. And you saw some photos of them in Italy doing glass fabrication for tourists in Italy. And so people are coming in and being like, you know, I want to learn what this looks like. That's the place where there's photos of them being like, tourists enter here. And then you see them doing the demonstration. And so that's what happens when you can create these exposures where we don't know. Some of them we're doing an exposure and it's like, yeah, that's fun. We'll keep doing it. It doesn't have to be an apprenticeship. But the ones that young people are really interested in, those are the ones we develop.
And tell a little bit more about how you got the passports.
So
I think this is easy, I'm just going to go and I've got everything ready to go and my ID is here and I'll just go, let her tell the story.
no, so young people who have been bounced around quite a bit don't always have all their documentation for all the different things. You know, their birth certificates with their auntie who lives in Gary and they're, you know, they don't have they need their 17th state ID that they've lost because they've moved 200 times or just because they're a little sloppy. Like, it's not always like a tearjerker, it's just they're sloppy. But so basically we were like, okay, we need to get all this documentation together. So the passports are tricky for a number of reasons, especially now, dare I say, for a group, a group of entirely brown youth and adults. And so we had a number of young people who needed to get all their documents together. Once we got all the documents in order to get the passports, they go in. Do you know that you can't use a credit card to buy a passport? Oh, right, now you're right. So you can't, and so what do nonprofits use to pay for things? Credit cards, because otherwise I would need to have a check cut to the thing for the right amount, to the right place, on the right date. Complete headache. So my staff is not just like taking youth to Italy, is running around paying out of pocket hundreds of dollars for each of these youth's passports because she couldn't use the credit cards that she has for the organization. And so she has to get reimbursed. It's this whole thing. Then you have a couple of young people whose stuff gets bounced back, right? Their stuff gets bounced back because one reason or another. We had one young person whose parent had, first of all, his parent emigrated from Mexico, is documented and has all the things, but emigrated at a time that the documentation was not sufficient for current documentation. And also has a criminal background here in the US. And so there was a couple people whose stuff got bounced back. His got back sent back multiple times to the point that he had to verify that he was here, even though he was born here. He was born in the US. He had to document. He went and found, because he was dead set. This is again one of our OGs who was dead set on going on this trip. He is like a leader. Anyway, I could tell you amazing things about this young man. But he had to go find his kindergarten transcript with his little teeny picture, his little self, his little 5-year-old self, to prove that he was in the United States at the beginning of his education journey, that he was enrolled in the United States before they would give him his passport. And there are so many young people that would have been like, man, forget it, like, forget it. But because we had been working with this young person, he was personally invested in this growth for himself and the impact it would have on the other youth who are going to have him go, that he was like, no, we're going to see this through the end. Dude, my husband wouldn't have done that. We had documentation stuff with my husband that I needed. I did all of these extra steps to make sure that we had a birth certificate that made sense and blah, blah, blah. My husband would have been like, forget that. And he is a 45-year-old grown man, right? This 21, let's see, he's just turned 22. So he was like, nope, this is happening. And so they all got their passports. We got them all luggage. Off they went to do amazing things in Italy. And I could spend the whole rest of the time talking about Italy, which I was not there. But so that is a great example of like, it isn't just building these opportunities, it's building the understanding of what it would actually take to have young people engage in this type of stuff. So my other example, we've done some culinary work. We aren't quite sure yet whether that's a career thing, and so besides the fact that Minnesota is home to many James Beard award-winning, like, it's not just like being a chef in a really prestigious restaurant is like not possible here. It is absolutely possible. But we aren't quite sure that apprenticeship is the way to go, but it's a life skill regardless. So we're going to keep doing it. We partner with some amazing chefs to do this. We had one young person who came in, we were doing the chicken class that you saw. So the chicken class was first 2 weeks. First week was learning knife skills, basic knife skills by a butcher. And a female butcher that runs a collective in Minneapolis. And she is really interested in making sure that young people know about the experiences that you can have in meat. And I'm like, okay. So every to each their own, right? So she comes in, she trains them on knife skills and then breaking down an entire chicken, which, spoiler, I don't know how to do. I know I did the youth work and I was like, I got home and decimated my own chicken at home. And I was like, oh, I should have maybe listened. So now these young people know that life skill, right? So that's great. And then we had a chef come in and do a different chef come in and do 3 different sessions on chicken 3 ways. So they took the chicken that they broke down and made 3 different dishes in a traditional Hmong dish with sticky rice, fried chicken, and something else. I can't remember what the other one was. But basically, like, how do you use this chicken then? So we, threw it all in the freezer. And then the last week we had a 3rd chef come in and do cooking with the scraps. So making bone broth. So you saw a couple of big stock pots that day.
I was trying to find.
Yep, it was like, please leap on, because I was just in our PPL kitchens. And so my job description that day was making sure to turn that off, and then another day it was like making sure that the chickens got out of the freezer so that they could defrost for the class. So my job description varies day to day. And they learned this like long range of life skills. But this young person, we had one young person come in for the first day, like hiding behind like lock bangs, just like this giant human, but like in this little cocoon of himself. And first thing that happens is he's like dead silent, but he recognizes one of the chefs. They were all there for that day to introduce themselves. And one of the chefs was his like 6th grade math teacher or something. It was just like, I know somebody here. And you just watch him like peek out from under and builds. And I was like, that's why we build relationships with who we build relationships with. So then he like goes through this whole experience. We're not sure whether he's enjoying it. Like, it's really hard to tell what's going on with this kid. And so he does this thing. We now run an annual salon at the end of the year. Because we don't often let folks, especially like funders and contributors, go into our sites because our youth are surveilled in so many ways. We don't usually do that. So we created an event for folks to come and see when the youth are like, this is what I've accomplished. And so it's a showcase. And so we paid this year a team of 10 youth caterers to work with that same chef to cater the whole event. So you saw them cooking, you saw the cupcakes, like all of that stuff is done by young people. And so this young person was like, I'll do that, like, especially for $25 an hour, like, I'll do that. And so he comes in, and at the end of that experience, I was chatting with him and paying them all and stuff. And he was like, first of all, his bangs are back now. And he's like, very quietly, like, I think I might want to be a chef. And I was like, really? He could have said literally anything after I think I want to be and I might have teared up. Literally anything, because this young person sees himself in something, right? Sees himself as having a skill that's valuable, that he can learn, that he feels confident in, like goosebumps even now, because I just want youth to be able to see themselves in their futures and contributing. And the fact, if he wants to be a chef, fantastic. We can help make that happen with him. And if he's like, yeah, turns out that was just the thing that I knew how to do and it was making me money, and now I see myself differently and I want to be a, rocket scientist. Okay, all right, let's pivot. But those are just a couple of examples of like how this plays out in like career readiness skills, how to get them into a space where they see themselves as employable and have the skills, that their basic needs are met, right? and that they are ready to have a work experience, both emotionally ready, basic needs ready, and like, I don't know, ready. I don't know how else to say that. Because the way that I describe it to our partners when it comes to apprenticeships is that our young people, even within that group of folks who are doing really dynamic work around the modern youth apprenticeships, are not working with our youth. They're not working with Opportunity Youth. They're working with NHS youth. They're working with young people that are doing internships before they get to college. They're working with young people who are like hungry for these experiences. And our young people are in credit recovery situations. They're not graduating on time. And so they're not the commonly recruited young people for these kinds of experiences. And my statement to them is always, you have to remember that the young people are coming in not with a reduction in capability. They are incredibly capable. They're coming in with a reduction in capacity. The capacity that they can hold while they're also making sure that their SNAP is eliminated for, folks. My husband and I mentor a young man he's 28 now, but we've known him since he was 12. And he was calling us asking for money, and we're like, we'll give you our last, like, what do you need, kid? Right? So sent him some money, and it turns out it was because now he's clicking into the fact that like he needed money for his mom's groceries because of the things that were stable for them are not stable anymore. And so we just have to expect that that is true for all of the young people that we're working with and program accordingly. I've been running my mouth for a minute. Yeah.
I'd say a little bit about trauma-informed care.
Sure.
What that is
That trauma-informed care is or TIC, in the youth services world, is a pretty well established now term for understanding that you don't have to know what someone has been through to know that they've been through something. And so we are developing programming with the understanding that folks are going to come in with a random trigger that maybe hasn't been healed yet. They're going to come in with one presentation one day, another presentation another day, where they're showing us who they are in lots of different areas. That maybe the way that you speak to someone on one day, maybe just you in particular, are going to remind them of somebody. So it's an understanding of depersonalizing how someone might respond to you or to a space, with an understanding that it's not what you've done, it's like what happened to you. Like what happened to create this reaction? What happened? And sometimes we're not even the right person to ask that question, but that's a question you ask yourself to reorient yourself to behaviors or things that young people are demonstrating. And you're like, what is wrong with this kid? It's like, what happened to this kid? And so that's the quickest I can talk about trauma-informed care. It's long day trainings and all of that stuff, but it is a very, very foundational understanding that people have been through something. And the idea that we are creating employer partnerships and things like that with work environments with this group of young people in mind, mean that they're creating policies and procedures with trauma-informed care as the baseline that serves all of us. Like, I don't have to ask each one of you what you've been through in your life to know that you've been through something hard. Like, I don't need to ask any of you. I know that there might be something I say up here today that someone's like, yeah, that was a little too close to home. And maybe you ask a pointed question of me. And I'm like, that hit home for that person, or maybe you have to leave. Be like, I'm not going to say that person hates me, right? I don't know me, but there might be something that just triggered a little bit too much, that maybe that's something you haven't thought of in a long time. I was in a training yesterday where someone had one of my peers had what looked to me to be a full-on dissociation because of a question that they had not thought about in a long time. We just need to acknowledge that we've all been through stuff, and some of us have been through stuff that we haven't looked at in a long time. And anything we develop with this group of young people in mind will serve all of us. It will create a more inclusive environment for all of us. It will create an opportunity for all of us to allow ourselves to be human. And I will say, as a young-ish parent, through COVID, like, we needed to acknowledge that we couldn't hide anymore that we have family lives, right? We couldn't hide anymore that we have people that need us for stuff while we were all on the Zooms in all of these situations. And so now we get the opportunity to develop a work environment where we get to be human and expectations and accountability is still met. And I think that serves all of us, because a lot of us, depending on which generation you're from, have had to pretend that stuff wasn't hard when it was in order to meet needs. Yeah.
Right, piggyback on the, so it also can point to like when young people experience ongoing trauma as they're growing, it compromises their physical and immunological systems.
Yeah.
So, asthma and hypertension, all those things are like our early warning signs of, you might have heard the term ACEs, like adverse childhood experiences, kind of started the ground of this trauma-informed care that now branches into understanding everybody's life. And so like the gentleman that I mentioned that went through my program, he unfortunately passed away really young with ischemic heart disease. And so like heart disease is a common killer of people that experience trauma that hasn't been treated, so untreated trauma. And the physical impacts on your health can be really serious. And so, but it's not irreversible either. So when we know what those responses are and understand how people's bodies react to that, we as care providers can provide a level of care that individualizes to that person, like you're saying. So understanding that for Ron, that Ron understood it for others, and that I was able to differentiate my approach and the other people because he gave me the opportunity to serve him.
Yeah. And the more he is able to understand himself and be given the opportunity to understand, the more he's able to share with other people about the kind of environment he needs in order to thrive.
Change everybody's life for it.
But
I'm curious what, health, careers, what are they looking for and what kind of training are some of these people doing in the healthcare system?
There's a lot of programs. So one of the things in LEAP is we try not to duplicate programming that already exists in places. So we are not trying to we thrive in partnership. And so if there's a program that's doing something really well around like CNA training or PCA training, like nursing, that kind of stuff. Are you talking about personal health or careers?
Well, in the beginning, you said that you worked with, or maybe Rick said something about the banks and the healthcare industry.
Yeah.
They're both really interested in training people, but training people for what?
Yeah, so those are in our adult pathways. So we've had a couple of different, we have phlebotomy and like blood drawing, and a couple of other healthcare pathways that are for adults. Those programs, you need to have high school degrees. And so most of our youth don't have that yet, although when they graduate, they could move into any of those adult pathways. For our young people, you do have young people who are interested in nursing and those types of fields. One of the things you saw, some VR, some virtual reality headsets, those are a youth-led program. Actually, I'm going to answer that question, but so I've already talked about, I guess I'll just really quick. When I say all of these lived experiences of foster care and homelessness, we are not bound by any particular definition of those things, which is really nice. So there's people talk about HUD homeless, where like you have to have an experience of homelessness that the HUD Housing and Urban Development Department identifies. We aren't bound by any of those things. So I'm just kind of, as I'm going by the slide, clarifying that like parenting might be caretaker to a minor, it might be a biological parent to a minor, it might be that they're a sibling that they're responsible for. Parenting means a lot of things. So just kind of stopping there for 2 seconds. This is kind of cool. We serve by proportion, and I will just say that we stopped at the end of A&E Casey. I will come back to your question, I swear. At the end of A&E Casey project, we stopped asking youth directly about some of those really personal questions, those lived experience questions, and we now ask the sites to aggregate them for us because they're already asking them. And so they're reporting back to us a percentage of youth who have had these lived experiences, and then we aggregate it for the whole network so that young people are not getting asked those intrusive questions as often. And that's kind of a data justice adjustment that we've made. All right, so these are our youth staff. And there's actually someone missing because she just got hired. But these are young people that represent our different sites and their PPL staff. So I'm getting to the VR. So Quentin and Jason led the assessment of this virtual reality career ready or career exploration program. So they met this organization called Transfer. They did a couple of different info sessions with them. They did a couple of demonstrations with them. We found out the cost. We did an assessment that would have been a good investment for LEAP. Because all these young people are apprentices. They're apprenticing in nonprofit operations and management. So they're learning how we develop and build and fund programming. So Quentin and Jason once we made that investment, now they train the sites on how to use VR. And what they do is they have little simulations where you can set a broken bone, you can draw blood, you can do brain surgery, you can do all of these different things in these little vignettes. So the nice thing about that is that young people can express interest in something and then just do one little exposure to it and be like, yeah, that was cool. Or like, just kidding, that blood splurt was not what's up. So we are giving them the opportunity to say the thing. I don't know how many young people you know that have been told that they'd be good lawyers because they like to argue. We need to stop telling young people that because there's a lot that goes into lawyering that is not about arguing with people. And so it's about giving them the look at what that actually looks and feels like before they commit, however many years of school and loans to it. So through that, we're getting a better sense of who wants to do what in terms of healthcare. The thing that I am hearing, to answer your actual question, is mental health and chemical health are things that young people want to learn how to do because many of them have seen how they were either helped or failed by those fields, or their families were helped or failed. I could tell a really tough story. I don't necessarily know that we need a suicide story in the middle of the morning, but young people who have been like, this could have been different, right? And so they are interested in helping fields in that type of way. Those are hard to apprentice in because you need so much education behind them. Not that you don't in medicine, but there's a lot of different stair steps in medicine and not so much in mental and chemical health. So we are right now working with some partners to figure out what are those entry level skill sets that would build towards mental health support and chemical health support as they build their careers. So we have one young person in Ina over here who wants to be a licensed alcohol and drug counselor. And she has had multiple opportunities to learn some of the skills before the content of chemical health. So Brenda's not up here, but Ina developed a driver's ed tutoring program for young people who are 18 plus that don't need to take driver's ed, but want their permits, want to drive legit. And so some of the photos that you saw was holding up pieces of paper. Some of those were driver's permits because they do tutoring that was youth developed. So it's basically a cultural brokering or a translation of driving skills to young people. And she's learning how to manage a caseload. She's learning how to manage a curriculum. She's learning how to manage content and encouragement of young people as they're moving through learning something. And so she's learning the skills she'll need for her chemical health career, doing something entirely different that meets a need that she knows is happening. So we're really trying to think creatively about how young people can learn the skills they will need that are transferable for future careers.
And so much of that is online. I had an experience this Friday. I had to go to the doctor and, when you sit in the waiting room and then they call your name and they have a clipboard and then this person takes you to a room.
Mm-hmm.
And they do all the, I call it triage. I don't know.
Yeah,
what it's
yeah.
called.
All the vitals.
Yeah, and get it all going. And I said, you're a new staff person here. And blah, blah, blah. And she said, yes, that's long, very short time. And I said, well, you're the happiest one in the whole room because of a building, because you're wearing a pink outfit. Everybody else has got the, that light washed out blue thing on, or maybe white ones, right? And I said, I'm going to ask for you to take me to my room every time I come now. And she was so bubbly and she looked older, and I just said to her, so how long have you been doing this? And what made you do this? And she said, well, I had another career. I was a teacher. I had a 4-year degree in elementary education, and it just didn't hit the mark. Just, it didn't take.
Yep.
And so she said she was looking for something else, and she thought it was medical. And she said, so I said, so where'd you go to school? She said, online at my kitchen table.
Yeah.
Everything except the final blood draws.
Mhm.
The blood draws were like this, yes, and you practice, but then you had to have a small internship window where you were not practicing on oranges anymore.
Yes, you have to do it on real human skin.
Real?
Eventually.
And I found it fascinating because I don't know what her wage income is at an entry level job like that, but I thought, she's taking care of herself. She's divorced. She has a 9-year-old child, and she decided to take a leap of faith and do an online thing. And now she says, well, I think this is taking me here. And she listed the places that she wanted to go to. And it wasn't an LPN. She wants to learn how to do the X-ray technician,
Yeah.
those types of things. And about 3 other choices she was looking into. And I just came home thinking, boy, if I had that kind of opportunity. But look what exists out there that my 77-year-old Ed doesn't know about.
Yep. So I'm looking at time. I thought I could show one little video, and then I can hang for a minute if you have additional questions. These are all the different places we are, by the way. These are all the different sites. So some of these are gonna look familiar maybe to some people. Some of them are a little more niche and nuanced. There's a split between, alternative schools and, community-based organizations that are serving young people. And there's a split between Hennepin County and Ramsey County. And then some of the sites do only one of the programs, some of them do another program, some do both. It depends on what their site needs. So here's them, and then I thought I would give you little, so someone pick a door. Who?
It's very close knit, kind of comforting, like a small place. People are just more open to say the name or like say like when you're accomplished, you probably talk to students, actually talk to them like they're a person and like not beneath them.
A lot of them have dealt with adverse conditions. A lot of these students are coming to PYC and engaging with the PL from a position where they're not necessarily on track in a sense. And now they're getting those opportunities and those resources that they may not have had access to before.
Very comfortable when I could be. It's like a second home. It's just like, everyone's very welcoming. I can say my communication skills have gotten better and definitely my patience. I can say everybody here really looks out for everyone. There's something about Rachel, she's just very nice.
Another thing that we try and do, we have the North Point Teen Clinic on site, but we also have in-school therapists. And we really try and address those mental health needs, because a lot of our students are at very different levels of where they are with their emotional responses and dealing with the trauma that they have had in their lives.
That's one little bit. So that was PYC High School over north. We have time for one more. Okay. Anyone want to pick another door?
3.
3 more? Oh, you're picking
No, 3, number 3.
Number 3.
For me, it's like the community. the community is so accepting and is able to like genuinely make you feel like a person, not like just like a kid that doesn't have anywhere to go.
We really look at a student as a person, and we really want to get to know them as human beings and what their needs are, what makes us unique. So we meet them where they're at, we tailor our services and really put them first.
Alternate schools have a really bad reputation, but the way that they talk and the way that they involve you in everything makes you feel like you're part of something special.
They have other obligations outside of school, whether it's work, family obligations, other things that are happening, we can accommodate them. And I think letting them know firsthand all the things that we can provide for them, and then listening to how we fit into their life and to their academic journey, and having them have that power in kind of building that structure for themselves really allows them to trust us.
They understand that I also have a job. They understand that I have problems coming out of out of school, and they're capable of working and being able to help you to become yourself in your life, but they're also helping you like still finish school and like helping you support there with classes when you need to leave a couple of days, like just things like that.
We're ready to hear them out and see how we can support them.
And this school, if you just pick, this was Loring Lit, and this is one of the PPL schools. So one of our partners within the education department.
Well, I wondered if in the interest of time, we could probably go on here for a long time.
Yeah.
Burning question or comment anybody else wants to make? This has been terrific. I know you can go on for a long time.
You're gonna have, you gotta kick me out.
Fascinating program. I really want to thank you. I want to thank PPL
Yeah.
and the organization that you're a strong part of, and the great work they do. They're really, I mean, I've learned more again, and I've been involved with the organization for 30 years. And it's just, they keep innovating. I mean, they're not people who stand still and say, well, let's do things the way we used to. What's a new way of doing things? And they measure their performance and their performance oriented. So Emily, you've been a great presenter.
Thank you for inviting me. I'll just say kudos to Loving on the Kids. You guys clearly create a community that they all wanted to stand up there and share who they are and be a part of this community. So keep doing that with the kids that are in front of you. Not everybody has that. So keep loving on those kids.
So my favorite cut for you, sure.
You are.
Thank you so much. I like you so much. Probably, I don't know how to talking to you.
You looked familiar.
You look familiar too.
So,
You're Emily?
yeah, it's a
Yeah.
dog.
Cross
Yeah.
paths, right?
You're in the YW.
YWCA, yeah.
We-
No, actually, no. So girls in music